You're listening to the Guilt Free Spending Podcast, episode 78. Well, hello there, everyone. Welcome back to the podcast. How are you all doing? How's spring treating you? I hope you're having an incredible season. I was just talking to a friend a couple of weeks ago, and she lives in North Dakota, and I think it was April 4th. They had 12 inches of snow covering everywhere. And it just took me back to when I used to live there. And that's North Dakota for you. You could have a blizzard in September or 12 inches of snow in April. Why not? So hopefully wherever you're listening from, you're warm and cozy, or if it's warm, you're feeling cool and ready to just splash in the pool as soon as summer gets here. Because right now in my area, the spring is a little chilly, which is cool because it won't last forever. Spring always eventually turns into summer. That's just how things work. So in today's episode, we're going to talk about embracing life's balance, how to build financial resilience. This is the perfect topic to have in the beginning of April because in Money Academy, my membership, we are covering financial resilience this month of April. Last month, we talked about emotional wealth. We broke down emotions, how to process them, how to use that knowledge when it comes to our finances. And now this month, we're really going deep into how to be resilient when it comes to your money. And your money is tied to your emotions because that's what we use to take any actions. Emotions that drive all of the actions that we take. And money is one of three most important things in life. So we're constantly using money, and that's constantly be driven by emotions. So it's really important to know how to use emotions to your advantage. Emotions are tools that we can use to create the life that we want. And I think that this is something that a lot of people are not aware of because I hear so many people saying, I can't control how I feel. And then my brain is always saying, like, yeah, you can. You actually can. Now, you don't control what thoughts come upon you, but you absolutely can control what thoughts you entertain, where you direct your brain. And therefore, you can control how you feel because your thoughts are what create your emotions. So that is like a really tidbit that's important to know, gives you a lot of power, puts you back in the driver's seat, and you kind of like take your power back, you know? Versus when you tell yourself, I can't control how I feel, that is not a good place to be because you have way more control than that. So today I want to break down a couple of concepts that I teach in my membership on emotions and it is highly relevant for how you use your money. It's highly relevant for how you see life, and how you see life is how you're going to do everything else, because our perspective is what really drives how we interact with our lives, with ourselves, with people around us, right? And so when you talk about perspective, I want to bring out the concept of life being a balance of both negative and positive. And I think that we also, as a society or as a race, been misled into thinking we should only be happy all of the time. I think there is a part of us, which is a gift that we've been given by creation, that knows we're meant for more. We're meant to grow and we can aspire for more. We're capable of incredible things. There's a part of us that knows that, but there's also a part of us that is deeply rooted in negativity. A knee-jerk reaction as imperfect being is to be negative, is to find the thing that's not working, to find the not enoughness. And that's why it's important to be able to direct your brain to what's working on purpose. Your brain is not naturally just going to be like, oh, yay, I'm having an incredible day. And all these things are happening and life is just happening for me. And when it rains, it pours all the abundance. Your brain would never do that. And you could sit there and wait forever and it'll never happen. So this is the part where you have to use that strength that's embedded in you and your DNA as a human to direct your brain to where you want it to go. And you want to be purposeful, intentional about this. But before you even try to do this, it's super important that you recognize that life is a balance of both negative and positive. So if you're so focused on being happy all of the time, you're creating so much suffering. Versus if you recognize life is a balance, then when you're happy, you recognize, okay, I know why I'm happy. And when you're unhappy, you also recognize, I know why I'm unhappy. I know how I feel. And here are the reasons why. And you accept both conditions. This is why it's important for you to recognize you can't control how you feel. You're not at the mercy of your emotions. Your emotions are tools for you to use. They're really at your mercy. So when we talk about the balance of negative and positive, when you look around the universe, there's always this and that. There's the daylight, there's nighttime, sunrise, sunsets, sea, land, right? There's the plus, there's the negative. There's always two sides of the same coin. And that's how I want you to see it. It's two sides of the same coin. You can't use a currency by just looking at one side of the coin. You have to make sure that it matches. Right? So for instance, this is a good analogy. You're never going to see a coin that on one side is the euro and then on the other side is American dollar. It's the coin, right? It's American coin. It's either an American coin or a European coin. That's how it always going to be. And then you have two sides that look different. They never look the same. But I really want you to ponder over where in your life do you see this balance of both the good and the positive and the negative. And I don't want to say the good and the bad because I don't call negative and positive good or bad. They're just chemically charged sensations. So you have the sunrise and the sunset. Neither one is good. Neither one is bad. They're both amazing. You know what I mean? So that's what I want you to understand. So when you feel negative emotions, they're not bad. They're just coming to you with a high density. The sensation is heavier, and that's why they feel so uncomfortable. But if you recognize that life is a mixture of both, when you're feeling the negative emotion, you will sit with it and allow it to be there because it needs to be there. It's part of the process of being alive. What we have right now is we only want to feel good, which is why people overspend or underspend, hug the money, don't invest it, don't multiply it. And then when they're retired, they're living on such a little income. Meanwhile, they could have expended their fortune, right? You want to recognize if there's a balance of positive and negative, then I'm going to accept it. So when I feel good, I'm excited about it. And when I feel bad or negative, I am open to it. Now, the discomfort from negative emotion is not like, I'm going to welcome this disappointing feeling, or I'm going to welcome dread. I'm going to welcome you're going to let it be there, but you're not going to go out in the world and look for it. Although as an entrepreneur, I look for discomfort on purpose because it helps me build resilience at a high level, to build a business, to train, to work with different humans and help them achieve financial confidence requires a high level of resilience. And so I think every human should always be looking forward to discomfort, creating discomfort to grow, to elevate the level of resilience. But if you're a 9 to 5 employee, I think that you're more prone to not even tapping into discomfort, which is so tricky for you because you have the safety of the paycheck and the job, but there's a little bit of like cognitive dissonance when it comes to you hearing me about discomfort because you're telling yourself, well, at least are uncomfortable because they want to win the medal and all that good stuff. But like that, because life is 50-50, positive and negative, I want to encourage you to go towards the discomfort, to find things in life that can bring you outside of your familiar zone, the place where you're just used to everything being the same and doing the same things over and over and going on in autopilot. I want to invite you to expose yourself to where you have to get out of the programming and be aware and awake in your life so that you can feel the emotions that are there and really feel alive. This is a different level of growth and it's amazing. And I want to invite you there. Like, really. Start by doing little things. Like, if you usually walk 2,000 miles a day, try walking 4,000 miles a day and see how that feels, right? That you will see how things are going to be a little more uncomfortable a little bit at a time. And so when I'm working out and I'm pushing weights and I'm doing all the things, I call that positive discomfort because it's taking me somewhere I want to go. I'm working purposefully here. So the idea that life is a combination, is a balance, is really important for you to embrace, because this takes us next to what I call financial resilience. The ability you have to feel how you feel, but to decide on purpose to use a specific emotion to drive your actions when it comes to making financial decisions. So this is why I really wanted to break down the 50-50 that I mentioned earlier. Because what I see today is, because we're under the impression that we're only supposed to be happy, when we feel a negative emotion, it's almost like we're out of control and we don't know what to do with it. But because we don't know what to do with it, that's what drives everything that happens afterwards. And next thing you know, you're making financial decisions that you look back on and you have tons of regrets, shame, and guilt. Because you didn't realize that you were being driven by an emotion you hadn't processed. Because it felt so heavy. And this is what I used to do with myself when I was dealing with food, right? Or even with me overspending. I have days where I used to overspend. I'm over that now, which is incredible. And this is why I help women through the same path. You want to stop overspending, I'm your girl. You want to prepare for retirement, I'm your girl. You want to stop underspending, I'm your girl. You want to spend money in a way that feels aligned, I'm your girl. Because I've been there. I used to allow emotions that I didn't have control over to drive my decisions when it came to money. And the results were always catastrophic. No wonder. But financial resilience is your ability to be present, knowing that not only I am wealthy emotionally, so I can hold the full spectrum of emotions from all of the positive to all of the negative, but also it's completely up to me how I feel before I take action about my finances. I am not at the mercy of my current feelings. I can examine how I feel, notice if that's how I actually want to feel, and then from there make decisions. But if that's not how I actually want to feel, I can choose how I want to feel. Because the truth is, we are emotional beings. A lot of people love to say make logical financial decisions by tuning out, not involving emotions. It's like really this line that's very popular, that if you want to make good financial decisions, you have to take the emotions out. You can't do that. You actually scientifically cannot do that. You're running on emotions. What that line really means to say is you want to be purposeful with the emotions that you use to make your financial decisions. So I want to invite you to tap into your body, to get familiar with how you feel, to identify emotions. Am I feeling a good emotion? How does it feel in my body? And I keep using the word good or bad because that's what you use. You all love to tell me I feel good because it's a positive emotion and I feel bad because it's a negative emotion. But I actually define them as positive and negative only. Negative is not bad. I'm going to keep repeating that until you finally get it. So if you feel discouraged, it just feels heavy. That's all. It's not actually a bad thing to be discouraged. It's just for you to tap in and observe and like, oh, what's happening? Let's explore where this discouragement come from. And so this is your opportunity to look in to yourself. What am I feeling here? Could I name it? Is this a positive or is this a negative emotion? Why is it here? What's the message here? All right. So say you're feeling a certain type of way and it's not positive and you're not sure what's going on. You want to first and foremost identify why you're feeling that way. Because if you go from that, I'm not feeling so great, and you go and take action, and one of those actions is swiping your card on something, you have no idea if that's really what you want to do. Because right now you're under autopilot. If you have not taken consciousness to realize, here is the emotion I'm feeling. Is it disappointment? Is it resentment? Is it jealousy? Is it anger? What is this heaviness I feel in my body? That is the emotion that will drive your next actions. So you want to keep that in mind. Now, if you're feeling this resentment or anger, whatever it is, pick one negative emotion that you might be feeling. And you're thinking to yourself, I don't want to make decisions right now because I don't trust myself. I'm feeling way too bad. I really need to let this pass first. That's a beautiful thing to do. But if in the moment you really need to make a decision, like there's something urgent that you need to do, I'm going to teach you how to be in the anger and not let the anger be the reason or the motive or the fuel of you making the next financial decision. You have the capacity to hold space in your body. When I say hold space, I mean think about you having a party and you're thinking to yourself, my house is this size, so I can only have this many people. So you tell yourself, maybe I can only have 50 people in my house comfortably. And so you're going to invite only 50 people to this party. What I want to tell you when it comes to yourself, your mind and spirit, you have the capacity to hold over 200 emotions, to feel them. You could feel over 200, because I don't even know exactly how many emotions. In the book that I published for my program, I have about 112 emotions in there that I researched. And then there's another book that I was reading, and it has, I think, about 186 emotions. And then there's a book from Brene Brown that has, I want to say 78. I'm not sure. I can't remember now. So I'm not sure exactly how many emotions are out there in the world, but you have the capacity to hold and not to hold, let me correct that, to feel all these emotions. And on a day-to-day basis, you're feeling about 60 to 1,000 thoughts, emotions a day, because we're running on about 60 to 65 thoughts a day, which I don't know how they measured that, but listen, it makes sense because our brain is talking all day long. Like our brain is always talking. And if it's not talking about something you don't like, it's talking about what you like. But it's always talking. The only time you don't hear your brain talking is when you're sleeping. So it kind of makes sense that it would be about 60,000 to a little bit more. I've seen 60,000 to 80,000 thoughts a day. So think about that. You're running on about 60,000 emotions a day. So there are more emotions out there that you could be feeling. So you are holding the space for all these emotions on a day-to-day basis. So not only you have the capacity to feel these emotions, now you have the infinite capacity to hold space for both a positive and a negative emotion at the same time. Sometimes we feel like, I feel so bad right now. I need to wait until I feel good before I move on. And as I said, if in this scenario, you must make a decision right now, you might feel stuck. You might feel cornered. You don't have to be. You can decide, wait, I'm capable. I have like this living room that can hold this many people. I only have one person in here. That means I can take in more people. And so you let the emotion that you need at that moment come in. So if you're feeling a negative emotion and you don't want to use that as fuel for the next decision you need to make, you can just let that emotion be there. Like, yeah, I hear you. You're not going anywhere. You're fine. You're fine right here. The minute you feel safe with that emotion, it just takes a chair and sits in the living room and it doesn't bother you anymore. You literally processed it. One of the reasons it feels like you got to let it go before you move on to the next is because you're resisting it. You're telling yourself, I shouldn't feel this bad. Why am I feeling this bad? It's so bad. I really wish I wasn't feeling this bad. That whole time you're saying these things to you, you're in resistance. And what you're doing is you're compounding the emotion, making it bigger and bigger and bigger. And it's taking up space. Imagine having those 50 seats in your house and 50 seats are taken by anger. It's the same emotion. It's just like compounded and compounded and compounded. Resilience means anger is here and you're like, oh, hi, anger. Welcome. Here's your chair. You're safe. I'm not pushing you away. You don't have to do anything. We can just hang out. And the minute you do that, anger is like shrink, takes up one seat. And now you can ask yourself, so how do I want to feel? What do I want to be thinking? What's the result I want to create with this decision I'm about to make? These questions will help you identify the emotional state you want to be in to make the decision. Then you will go for that. You want to be decisive. You want to be self-trusting. You want to be assured. You want to be loyal. Any of those emotions, okay. What do you want to be thinking to feel those emotions? That's what takes you to that emotional state. And because that's where you're directing your attention, your focus, that's what's going to drive the next decision or the actions you want to take. This is the power you have. And for you to say, I can't control my emotions, it's only because you haven't miseducated on how amazing and powerful you are. You are capable of so much more than just sitting there and allowing emotion to wash over you, come and go, and kind of just like make be moody, right? We say we're moody because we just don't think we can control how we feel. But there's so much more we can do besides just sitting and watching ourselves being thrown about by how we feel. So in my membership, and in one of the calls that we had on emotional wealth, one of my members asked a question, and I thought that was so interesting, and I wanted to share that with you. She said, what's the difference between making space for sadness and trying to push it away with a positive thought? And I think this is a misconception most people have, is that we have to be positive all the time. So when you feel negative, you kind of want to move it away, kick it out so that positivity can come in. And that is not what I teach, because of the balance of positive and negative emotions of the world. The world is a beautiful display of a balance of two sides of the same coin. So the goal here in everything I'm teaching you on this episode is not to never feel negative. The goal is to understand the emotion you're feeling, recognizing that you can control it, recognizing that you can pivot into a different emotion if you want to, and you can allow that emotion to drive your actions. We're never working on eliminating negative emotions, because sometimes things happen and you do want to feel negative. If somebody hurts my child, I do not want to feel positive about that. You best believe that, right? And I'm always misleading people when I say my child. I don't actually have children, but my sister's kids are mine. So if you mess with my niece, my one and only niece, you best believe I will not be feeling positive. I will feel very negative. But the thing is too, like, if you think about it, if I feel negative in that situation, I'm going to let myself feel that 100%. But that is not what emotion I'm going to use to take actions towards you that hurt my niece. Because I don't want to multiply the negativity that has been created by what was done to her. You know what I mean? And so it would require me to implement resilience in this instance. So when I talk about financial resilience, it's your ability to use emotions to support you financially. But this is a skill you can apply in every area of your life. Say someone says something to you that puts you off, right? And you're like in a bad mood. But you don't want people around you to be the recipients of your bad mood. You could decide, yeah, I'm going to feel bad about what this person did to me, but also I'm going to keep it here. And then when I'm interacting with other people, I'm going to interact from a positive, a powerful state. And what's that state? What do I want it to be? That's your power. Which is why I remember thinking, I'm not a morning person. I was not a morning person. I'm an all-day person. But when I wasn't a morning person, one of the things that I always made sure was, even though I'm not a morning person, which means I'm not necessarily in the chippiest, happiest mood in the morning, no one is going to be the recipient of my bad mood. So in the morning, when I used to live with my sister, she would love to want to talk to me. And I would just look at her and be like, my eyes would just ask her, are you sure you want to have this conversation right now? Because it may not go well. Or I would text her and be like, can we do this in 1 hour? I need an hour. But I would never want to allow my internal state, if it was negative, to be received on others, poured on others. So this is the power you do have. And you do this all the time. You know you do this. Now you can do this on purpose and in every area of your life. And that's going to show you how much more powerful you are. Because even if you do this, when it comes to the big things in life, you just don't know how to actually take that power and implement it in those big things. Now you know that it's not just an accident that you have this gift. This is something you can cultivate and build into a very powerful skill. So when the member of my community asked this question about making space for sadness, because this is what I teach them, emotions, we just create more space for it, them. We're not pushing any negative emotion with positive thoughts. So we don't even entertain having another thought while we're feeling negative. And so we don't process emotion by replacing them. You want to let the emotion go through your body. You allow them and understand them because they're tools, they're messages. They allow you to connect to yourself. So you're not going to try to override the sadness with the positive thought, because what you're doing is you're just delaying the sadness and you're also compounding it. Remember when I talked about anger? What you're doing with sadness is you are giving it all the seats of the house, and then there's no room for all of the other emotions because you're just sad. So when you're delaying an emotion like this or compounding it, it doesn't disappear. It just sits in your body. And then it becomes a pattern. Now, for everything that doesn't work out right, you go to sadness because that's what is habiting your system. But if you processed it, your body would recognize it as a guest. Like, oh yeah, sadness was here the other day, but it's not here now because it wasn't here to stay. It was here for a message and then it left. But if you're sitting with the sadness because you're letting it compound, you're ignoring it, it's going to be banging on your window and get bigger and bigger and bigger, take over your life, and you're going to be living in this pattern of sadness. This is why people sit in anxiety and it becomes their home. It becomes where they go to when things don't work out. On a regular basis, just to be, they're already just anxious. They're naturally anxious because they've gotten into a pattern of just letting that be there. I heard this illustration recently that I thought was so amazing, and I want to always save this for the rest of my life, so I know that you're going to love it. Think of your mind, of your brain, as a house full of different rooms, and each of these rooms host an emotion. So you could have happiness, you could have joy, you could have exhilaration, disappointment, grief, dread, sadness, inevitability. I've created inevitability to be an emotion, but I bet you can feel inevitable if you really tap into your body. So think about this house with all these different emotions, right? And you could find yourself one day in the grief room. If you are inside the grief room, this is where most people think, I don't have control over this. But because it's a room, you can walk out of it. You don't go in the room to stay in the room. You can walk out of the room. You can go in joy room. You can go in sufficiency room. You can go in contentment room. You get to decide how long you stay in each room. And when you walk into a new room, you get to move yourself from room to room. That's your power. You're not a captive and a prisoner in the rooms. This is your home that has all these rooms: insecurity, shame, guilt, wisdom, and you get to pick where you're going to be. Now, sometimes you may need to linger in one room, but just know you don't have to stay in it. You don't have to live in it. I just did this exercise in my community when we talked about building this financially confident woman. Who you're becoming was the title of the training. And we talked about the fact that in your past, there are events that have happened, and what you translate those events to be have created your emotional home. This place where you go to often. It's a group of different emotions. Sometimes it's 3, sometimes it's 1. Most times it's 3, but you really want to identify what the translation of your past has created. And the reason I'm bringing this up is because resilience in this case will allow you to recognize, this is where I've been. This is where I want to go. And I'm going to start inching my way out of that old emotional home that's not serving me to this new one. And I'm capable of that. I can move. That's your power. You could do all of this with a smile because you're being powerful through the process. So life could throw at you so many lemons, and you can make lemonade or you can make tequila. You decide. You know what I mean? And that's your power. So when we talk about life balance, it's knowing we always have two sides of the same coin. Let's welcome those two sides and not prefer one over the other. That's dangerous to want just one and then not want the other, because then we compound the other due to the resistance. And when we know we have this power to have both, now we know we can pivot at will because we're capable human beings. This is one of the concepts I teach in my masterclass, How to Spend Your Money Guilt-Free, that I host on Thursday at 5:30 p.m. I want to see you there because when you show up live for this training, I put you through an awareness process that changes your life from the moment you take the class. And so being there live is crucial to the progress you want to make financially. And then in part of what I talked about is what we discussed there, your ability to have a life that includes this and that. That's that life, that balance of life. That's that level of resiliency where you recognize maybe circumstances may not be aligning, but we don't focus on circumstance to create the life that we actually do want. So how to spend your money guilt-free? You will need to go to greenwealthlegacy.com/confidence or check the show notes so that you can sign up for the class. Showing up live for this class is one of the highest ways you can display self-love, because this year is the year where you learn how not to spend your money guilt-free anymore. All right, my friends, have an incredible rest of your day. And until I see you into the next episode, go out there and live your life on purpose.